Welcome to episode 2 of our AI and Us Explainer. Today, we're tackling something titled Prompt versus Statistical Mirror, and we're going to unpack a pretty mind-bending reality check. You see, the prompt you type into your screen and the AI you're talking to, they aren't separate things. They are completely, totally intertwined. One strictly determines the exact behavior of the other, and in this explainer, we're going to map out exactly how that collision happens.
So, picture this. You're up at 2 a.m., stuck on a brutal physics problem. Or maybe you've got this weird, concerning chest pain, so you ask an AI for help, and it answers with such perfect logic, impeccable grammar, and just this incredibly articulate flow, you'd swear there's a literal genius sitting right there inside your laptop. Well, let's break that illusion right now. The AI has absolutely no idea what you just said. It completely lacks a mind. It doesn't understand you. It merely reflects you.
There's a core idea we really need to anchor on today, and it goes like this. AI does not think. It reorganizes information. When a generative AI answers your question, it's relying purely on heavy math. It's just calculating the absolute most probable word to type next based on the billions of texts it absorbed during its massive training phase. No consciousness, just highly probable patterns.
Which brings us to the core mechanism at play here. Think of the AI as a statistical mirror. What does that actually mean? Well, the mirror itself is this vast, dark dataset of historical human language patterns. And your prompt? Your prompt is the flashlight shining right into it. The reason you can't separate the two is because the angle and the intensity of your light mathematically determine the reflection you get back. Your prompt drastically reduces the ambiguity of all the possible things the AI could say. So in practice, the final output you see on your screen is just the exact collision of the AI's immense data and the precise wording of your question.
To really wrap our heads around this integrated mechanism, visualize it in 3 ways. First, it's basically a hyper-refined autocomplete. Calculating a text sequence based on millions of examples is super impressive, sure, but perfectly continuing a sentence requires zero actual comprehension. Second, imagine a library that talks back. It holds all of humanity's words, but it completely lacks humanity's lived experience. It can talk endlessly about the rain, but it's never actually felt a drop of water. Third, it's a mirror with a collective memory. It's constantly bouncing back the historical traces of millions of writers who came before you.
And all of this leads us to a massive realization. Asking is delimiting the pattern that is activated. When you ask a question, you aren't knocking on the door of some hidden intelligence. You are mathematically locking in a probability space. You define the exact boundaries for a plausible continuation, forcing that giant mirror to bounce back one specific reflection out of literally millions of possibilities.
Let's actually look at how this plays out in real life, starting with a clinical setting. If you type a vague prompt like, "What are the symptoms of heart failure?" you trigger a very generic, Wikipedia-level reflection. You get an average list because your light was incredibly broad. But if you inject professional criteria, say a 67-year-old hypertensive patient with progressive exertional dyspnea, the probability space shrinks drastically. The mirror is suddenly forced to pull patterns from highly specialized clinical literature. Same mirror, completely different reflection because of the prompt.
We see the exact same dynamic in law. If you just ask for a general explanation of civil liability, you get statistical noise. It basically hands you first-year law school notes. But when a lawyer introduces specific terms like tacit modification and strictly demands Supreme Court criteria, the prompt acts as a sharp intellectual tool. The beam of light focuses tightly, and the AI is mathematically forced to retrieve highly specific jurisprudence.
Or imagine a journalist using it to check their own work. Asking, "Hey, is this well written?" basically triggers the AI's built-in desire to be socially safe and validate you. You just get empty praise. But if you command it to act as an aggressive editor hunting for unproven assumptions about, say, urban voter base loss, you force a logic audit. You're targeting a critical hypothesis you already suspect, and the tool reflects your critical depth right back at you.
Context is literally everything. Ask a vague public policy question, and you're going to get a completely useless, decontextualized manual. But inject your actual messy reality, like informal micro-enterprises, tight budgets, and specific regions in Latin America, and you constrain the model. You force it into delivering relevant impact evaluation patterns. Your prior knowledge is what actually powers the tool.
And think about a student studying for a physics exam. Saying, "solve this," just builds a lazy shortcut to a final answer, entirely bypassing the learning process. But if you outline what you actually know and ask the AI to check your two-phase acceleration logic step by step by asking you questions, suddenly the AI transforms into a metacognitive tutor. You actively shape the space to demand an educational scaffold.
All these examples prove one undeniable fact. The response begins in the question. A prompt doesn't get better because you copied some secret formula off the internet. It gets better because you, the human, know exactly what you need. You bring the strict conditions, the specific criteria, the intellectual anchor. The AI just builds a statistical pattern around what you provide. Now, because this isn't a thinking machine, but simply a mechanism calculating probabilities, it comes with some pretty severe built-in vulnerabilities. If we blindly trust this statistical mirror, things go wrong fast. There are 4 major traps you absolutely have to actively dodge. Let's walk through them.
First up is reflected bias. What is this? Well, this is when the model spits back historical stereotypes or unjust associations. Why does it happen? Because ambiguous prompts give the system too much room, forcing it to rely on the average regularities scraped from the internet, absorbing all our historical human prejudices. And the implication is dangerous. The AI will casually hand you a heavily biased idea, completely wrapped in flawless, convincing grammar.
Second is false authority. This is the very real danger of confusing a beautifully written answer with a factually true answer. You see, these models are optimized to sound incredibly solid and confident. If your prompt asks for an expert tone but doesn't strictly demand factual sources, the AI will proudly hand you elegant, total fiction.
Third, we have cognitive dependence. This is the trap of letting the tool do the heavy intellectual lifting so you don't have to. When you completely outsource the evaluation of evidence or the construction of an argument to a machine, your own critical muscles start to atrophy. You actively erode your own human capacity for judgment and metacognition. Finally, there's complacency. Keep in mind, the engineers tuned these models to be incredibly cooperative. That means they have a massive statistical bias toward agreeing with you. If you feed the AI a flawed assumption in your prompt, it will often eagerly validate your mistake just to be a helpful assistant, completely distorting your judgment rather than correcting it.
To beat these risks, your entire mindset has to shift. The prompt is an intellectual decision. That is your ultimate human advantage right there. You have to actively use the mirror for thinking, organizing, and exploring. The tool proposes the words, sure, but you provide the value and the judgment.
So how do we practically build a genuinely powerful prompt that controls the mirror? 3 strict rules. Step 1, name the context. Who are you and who is reading this? Step 2, define the format. Give the AI clear structural boundaries to work within. And step 3, the absolute most critical, explicitly outline the criteria. Set hard limits on what makes a great answer. You decide, the AI follows.
And equally important are the absolute red lines, the errors you must avoid. Never ask the AI to make a final, sensitive decision for you. Never feed it closed, heavily biased questions that drag the model into unfair statistical patterns. And please, ditch those lazy, minimal prompts that leave the AI completely guessing about your context. Remember, the AI is your organizer. You are the judge.
I really want to challenge you to stop seeing prompting as just some basic tech trick. It's a rigorous intellectual exercise. In fact, there are entire academic fields now, like socio-technical systems governance and interaction studies, dedicated strictly to mapping these cognitive vulnerabilities and studying exactly how human brains interact with these machines. Treat every single prompt as an experiment in critical thinking.
We've taken a pretty deep look into the statistical mirror today, but things are about to get even deeper. Coming up next in Episode 3, the problem is not that AI is wrong, but that it convinces you. We're going to explore the massive cognitive impact these tools have on our minds, and you won't want to miss it.
In AI and Us, technology changes, judgment decides. This video essay was created with Notebook LM from a script and curated sources by Victor Perez Abre with support from AI Tools. Video essay series AI and Us.